Hello, welcome to our feature story, The Chinese Diaspora, a Spectrum of Student Experiences, and to our RFLA journey.
Hi, my name is Renee Sang. I am a fourth-year student majoring in critical media and cultural studies and also double majoring in studio art, and I'm in the class of 2021.
Hi, my name is Olivia Notman. I'm a fourth-year student majoring in communication studies, concentrating in the area of public relations. I am also in the class of 2021.
So to start my Rollins Foundations in Liberal Arts journey, I actually started in the RCC Backstage Theater Pass course, which Olivia was also in during my first semester on campus. And as for the other RFLA courses I've taken, I've been in RFLA 200A, my arts course, the Memory and the Photograph, which was a community engagement course as well, in which we worked on a series of photographs with residents at the Mayflower Retirement Homes, and which you can see pictured here. For my next RFLA 200, I took Human-Animal Interactions as my science course. This was a course where we got to observe the psychology of dogs and cats, which allowed us to do our lab work at the dog park and local animal shelter, which I've also pictured here. And for my next RFLA 200, I took Inequality and Privilege, which taught me a lot about the different imbalances in power and access to basic resources that are very prevalent in the U.S. And this course was also pretty relevant to my major, which was helpful. And now I'm in the RFLA 300, Global Journalism, where we have been examining global news and how this specific type of news is used to connect collective humanity, and also learning the different critical theories that have led to the global media systems that have affected us to this day.
My Rollins Foundations journey began with my RCC Backstage Theater Pass. Renee and I took this class together along with our final RFLA 300, Global Journalism. The other RFLA courses I've taken are Ethics, Politics, and Art, where we examined the political and ethical points of views in art. I did a project on Sallyman's immediate family. I examined why it was controversial to some viewers and what Sallyman's thinking was behind it. My science RFLA was called Lasers and Lights. We studied how lights and lasers functioned, and I even got to do a project on Star Wars holograms. I also enjoyed a course called Ethical Ideas in Theater and Film. We got to watch a great deal of films and plays to find the ethical ideas in the plots. My RFLA 300 is the only course relevant to my major because communication studies looks into journalism from time to time. Like Renee said before, we have been examining global news and how this specific type of news is used to connect collective humanity, and is also learning different critical theories that led to the global media systems that have affected us today. These are some of the statistics and facts we had to give a bit of context and information on the Chinese diaspora in the United States and Florida. If you didn't know, the Chinese population in the United States is not very large, 5.6% of the U.S. population to be exact. This does explain why there are smaller Asian presences in some states than others. However, there are the largest Asian demographic in the United States.
So for our RFLA capstone project and global feature story, we decided to focus on the Chinese diaspora in Florida. And we really wanted to get a variety of perspectives and views on this, so we interviewed a lot of different people and heard kind of a multitude of perspectives on this. And ultimately, I think the Chinese experience in the U.S. can be best compared to a spectrum in which there's a range of complexities and nuances that make it up. Obviously, this was also a personal topic for me as I am Chinese American, so it was also interesting to kind of learn about myself through this process as well. So for our story, since we were trying to provide a diverse set of experiences, but through a student lens, we interviewed students with different backgrounds and perspectives from living in Florida. So there was Jessica Zhang, a Rollins International student who's from China and head of the China Club, who we got to meet virtually, and Nicholas Quach, a UCF student who's studying business, and Stephanie Sang, who is also actually a previous Rollins alum who studied English and anthropology. And after getting to know them and interview them, we found that they all had kind of differently ranging experiences, so some very strongly identified with their Chinese culture and less with their American culture, while some strongly affiliated with their American cultural identity while not really feeling as part of their Chinese side. But overall, we found that for those in the Chinese diaspora in the US, but specifically focusing on Orlando, Florida, there was a pattern in which they really struggled to connect or express their Chinese side of their cultural identity, especially if they grew up here. And this is largely due to existing negative narratives on assimilation and erasure on one's culture in order to be fully accepted as an American. And this is especially notable in Florida, where the population is not as diverse.
We have learned about the effects of growing up around diverse or not so diverse areas, specifically Florida versus Hawaii. These experiences can be positive or negative depending on the experience. We've included graphics to show the difference between the populations in Florida compared to Hawaii. Every Chinese person has different levels of how they identify with or express their cultural identities. The desire to assimilate and fit into the normative American culture can cause shame, embarrassment, and dissociation with Chinese Americans. We hope that we have taught readers that cultural identity is complex and nuanced. Every experience varies. Culture is not so black and white.
Ultimately, though, our research story is a global one because it focuses on themes of displacement and cultural confusion, which can be universal feelings that people are experiencing worldwide, especially as globalization and migration continue. And there's also a shared human experience of wanting to belong into both society and or a culture and the conflicts that can come with trying to balance between both. And I think this report that we've created is especially pertinent and important to consider as discrimination, racism, and xenophobia against Chinese people has increased and surged worldwide with the COVID-19 pandemic. This is also applied to Asians in general as well. And unfortunately, just as there are always people who are trying to belong and be a part of a group or society, there are also always people trying to keep them out and exclude others. And these are all universal and global concepts that don't just pertain to this report and set of individuals, but rather extends and is shared and understood at one level or another by others in diaspora or minority groups, or even simply those who are trying to balance between multiple cultural identities. Overall, the Rollins Foundations in Liberal Arts curriculum has taught me how to approach my education and subjects beyond the classroom too, with a holistic and well-rounded approach. And I think being immersed in other subjects and most of all other students outside of your major is especially important for this and for better understanding just other perspectives outside of your own, which I think will also give me an advantage as a responsible and active citizen as I'm entering the workforce and applying for future endeavors.
The RFLA experience will continue to benefit us in our post-Rollins lives, and Rollins has definitely given us a well-rounded education.